more interested in the why. Like what is it that is makes us uncomfortable to talk about?
Pretty sure this is one of the scenes of the clips where me or Spencer approach her with, "How would you do with a client that's going through this specific issue where they were outed for their eating disorder online and social media? They were goaded, they were manipulated, they were betrayed." And so we talk about what would be the symptoms or signs of someone being betrayed like this, but then also what would be the fallout, and how would you sit with that individual that just went through that traumatic experience from some shit ass friend like Sin Gen V that's just trying to get clout by capitalizing on people's trauma by posting it on social media. So that's what this clip is talking about.
This scene, I know it's revolving more around social media, so I could see that plausibly happening. I think even Justine is the mean girl. And when I'm thinking back to when I grew up, I was a 90s baby. I was born in 1990. And so that type of what's called relational aggression in the research, where it is that I'm going to not hit you in the face. What I'm going to do is spread rumors about you, character assassination, or get you in some other way. And so there are probably a lot of high schools. I think that happened in mine too, where it wasn't social media involved. That takes it to a whole new level, and that does happen. There's still this, wow, I trusted you, and now everyone knows the secret about me that I didn't want, clearly didn't want disclosed, and there's a lot of stigma surrounding it. Also for her, I mean, there's already the shame and everything, and also let's be honest, in a lot of comics, I mean, I think Gen V and the Boys does a better job of this than some of the other universes where, if this were real life, some powers would be favored over others. Let's be honest. Some are
Yeah.
seen as like cooler or whatever. And so there are all these layers wrapped up. And so if she was sitting in my office, I mean, we're just going to make space for that. And I'm not going to swoop in and do some let's try to challenge these thoughts right now. That may not be what she needs at this moment. It sounds like more than anything, I'm noting there's been a huge rupture in trust with someone that she admired and looked up to. And this person also this wasn't I accidentally told one person and then that I told them not to tell someone and then no. This was so clearly orchestrated. We do I hate Justine. We don't like Justine. Justine is the epitome of Regina George mean girl bullshit.
Same.
And so yeah, someone in my office, you got to make space for that before we can even get anywhere. There's been this rupture. She finally feels vulnerable to tell someone and it's also like coerced out of her. Like we have to acknowledge that. That was totally manipulated out of her as well. And now it's all out and it goes alongside all these other things happening around the same time that are just super super activating. We need more social psychology classes, I think, because there is actually something in social psychology and I guess evolutionary psychology, truth to fault theory, where we assume that the other person is telling us the truth because we have to. We're social creatures, just the way that we've evolved over time. And also, we can't just reproduce within our own bodies without like we are social creatures. We we
Come
need
on.
you're
Ah.
we need other people. So yeah, you're right. It's the ultimate nuance. Like, were there things that I was blinded to that I could have picked up on, or were there not? I mean, how many times true crime area? Oh, this person would have never done X, Y, Z. You're you're assuming that they're telling you the truth. And again, to your point, that doesn't mean we swing to the opposite way. We don't trust anyone. But I think both the boys and Gen V do a really good job of demonstrating that insidious kind of manipulation and exploitation that happens. It's really tricky to tease apart.
Yeah. And also kind of just before we get to there, I mean, you worked in corrections, and just being like having someone in isolation for too long,
Oh
it
yeah.
fucks up your head. It really
Yes.
does. It fucks you up. So it's like, we also need to relate that back into just everyday life as well. It's like if we isolate ourselves too much, that's gonna get to us in some way. And that's why we need to be social. So yeah. Nope.
Yeah.
Nope. Being inside in your own head for too long really get to you. Yeah. Anybody.
Yeah, they've done research on it. Horrible.
Yeah.
Horrible. And there's a loneliness epidemic right now because it legitimately has effects on our physical health.
Hmm. All right. Well, let's get into this next scene. With Emma and Marie. So in this scene, Marie comes back to see Emma. She's like at her smallest, so that means she was purging like extra. Um, because I'm not sure if it was that because of like her mom. It was because of her mom. Yeah. All of it kind of mixing into one. And so now we're actually seeing that, yeah, it's not just her using her powers, it's actually something that she uses to cope with all these different things going on in her life as well. And, and then so they're kind of having this honest talk with one another, and how they use their powers each, how um, Marie's kind of telling Emma, like, no, this is like an actual problem. Like, you need to, get some help for this. And then, Emma kind of comes back with, well, you cut yourself, so, you know, you do it. And there is truth to that she also uses it to cope as well, self-harming. And we've seen that because, yeah, same episode. And we've seen it throughout the whole season, really. Like anytime she gets in thinking about her family and what she's did to them, she killed her family accidentally. After that, anytime she thinks about it, she kind of cuts herself and uses her powers and kind of uses that as like a little bit of an excuse to be like, hey, yeah, I'm using my powers, cut. And you're like, "Oh, okay, all right." Um, but yeah, I think this is, well, I actually just want to get to this. Why did we pick the scene? Huh? Why did we do it? Well, I don't know. I don't know what happened. Talking back.
This one really demonstrates, I mean, number one, how helpful it is, obviously, to have social support. Also, she made a good point about Marie, if we're being honest. But most importantly, is the concealment that happens, the shame surrounding that happens. There's a difference between, it could be anorexia, it could be bulimia, it could be binge eating disorder, and just as a side note for people, those overlap a lot more than people realize. These are not really as distinct categories as we really think, because you can be purging and have anorexia. Actually, the most common is atypical anorexia. I hate that title as a side note, but that just means you aren't extremely thin by the standards required for diagnosis. There's a difference in these versus, let's say, orthorexia, which isn't actually like a set diagnosis, but it's the clean eating. It's more related to the distress. If I go out to a restaurant, I bring my pre-made meals with me. I experience a lot of distress if I order a steak and there's butter on it or something like that. There are communities it's more socially acceptable to engage in that type of behavior, even socially. With this type of behavior in Gen Z, I mean, it's what we think of a lot of times with eating disorders, and it's inherently complicated for her because it is related to her powers. And so her trying to downplay it to Marie is a huge piece here, trying to minimize it, also deflecting a little bit, saw that move, putting it back on Marie, but really trying to protect herself in that sense. Because really then the question is, what is she defending against if she's getting defensive? And it's because deep down she knows how serious that was. And it really does demonstrate, I mean, in a much more physical, I guess, like in a different way. Probably a lot of people don't realize this, but outside of substance use disorders, eating disorders like in the mental health arena have the highest mortality rates, like outside of substance use and overdoses. So it was a very literal way of describing the dangers if she were to keep doing that. It does a good job, I think, of capturing that can be the case in real life too, especially because you have to eat to survive. So inherently, there's these complicating factors there.
So this is when your boy Dr. Nas asks the good question, because we're talking about, or real talk, we're talking about perfectionism and how Gen V, this is played out throughout the college experience. but also her specifically being a woman and wanting to be thin and get these roles and have to go over the rankings of a superhero, then have to compete for like love interest in real life, and then just overall body expectations. And she's also a muscular, more stronger woman too, so she's not the petite woman that, you know, society thinks that she needs to be. And then we get into, you know, how they're all taking these chemicals. Their parents are pushing them to be these all-stars, these superheroes. They're capitalizing on them, giving them the drugs, these performance enhancers, to make money off of their backs. And this, how is that not pressure? Your whole objective and reason for being born is technically so your parents can capitalize on you and make money off of you, profit from you. Because it wasn't just about changing the world while they were given these drugs. It was to become superheroes and have a chance at this lottery, joining the seven. The seven most racist, scandalous, rotten motherfuckers on earth. Oh, you may not understand that unless you've seen actually the show The Boys, because obviously that'll explain that they're all horrible. All right, let's get into the clip. Let's hear what the Dr. Matt got to say.
For sure, especially when I did work with college STEM students. I think I was working more with undergrads and in STEM, or vet students, or things like that, where high amount of achievement. They're just oriented toward achievement. That could be partly their personality, that could be the dynamics they grew up in, and yeah, that perfection. And specifically, if we're looking at anorexia, there tends to be a lot of that perfectionism from parents kind of passed on, either explicitly said or modeled to them. And I mean, in my mind, it's also grandiosity, especially when we're thinking about Gen V. It's you gave your baby, who can't like really legally consent as like an infant, and you give your baby this compound V, not really knowing what's going to fully happen. And so then it's, I want my baby to be special. I mean, it's peak helicopter parent almost of I want my baby to be special, or the child actor kind of parents, the performance parents that are highly focused on the prestige, or they want their kid to be special, and apparently these kids were not going to be special anyway, so they give them compound V. And then what if the powers don't turn out exactly the way that the parents wanted, which I think shows up very clearly in the scene when the mom says, you got to work with what you got. And very much like you pointed out, mom very much views her as kind of this fragile being that she needs to swoop in and rescue. She can't trust her judgment. Like mom cannot trust her judgment. She needs to swoop in. She knows what's best for her. So she's going to come in and measure her height, and then they're at the ball and going through that, and yeah, trying to place her in this box, and also obviously heavily exploit her. And the theme through all of this is she's not listening to her daughter at all. Not listening to her daughter, not listening really to what she needs at all. She's placing, again, like just thinking about what she thinks her daughter needs. But I'm not hearing her actually hearing her daughter and what her daughter needs to actually feel better. Let's say, okay, you are worried about your daughter's size or weight or whatever, her health. What are you doing? All you offered to do was get measurements on her, and then what were you going to do? What, like, if you were that concerned, what were you going to do?
Hey, thanks for watching this video. Check out the full episode on our channel and anywhere you find podcasts. Also, remember to like and subscribe. Whoop whoop!